What is up, guys? Welcome to week 21 of the Bad Beat Bryce all-in podcast with Ryan the Rock. How's it going, Ryan?
Sure. Dude, it's going really, really well. An interesting new time. We have natural light and everything. It's not 7 p.m. It's high noon on a Thursday, Bryce.
Did your webcam come in? I heard you ordered a webcam just for this interview.
A new webcam just for this interview. It's coming tomorrow.
It's coming tomorrow. Wow, perfect timing.
Thanks,
for
Amazon.
an interview that's happening right now.
Oh my gosh.
Would you like to do the honors of our guest today?
I would. So this week's guest is a giant in the poker community, a pioneer of modern poker strategy in both tournaments and cash games. From humble beginnings as a 12-year-old ranked in the top 10 players in the world at Magic the Gathering, Jonathan Little is now a member of the top 100 all-time money list in the U.S. with over $7 million in tournament winnings. In 2007, at the age of 22, Jonathan won his first WPT title and over $1 million in the process. Flash forward to this past year, when Jonathan was recognized at the Global Poker Awards, receiving the People's Choice for Poker Personality of the Year award, besting the likes of Ryan DiPaolo, Lex Veldhouse, and Joey Ingram. I personally own 5 of his 14 best-selling books and credit him with any semblance of a poker strategy I currently have. Please be sure to check out his new title, Excelling at Tough No-Limit Hold'em Games, his coaching site, pokercoaching.com, as well as his awesome content on YouTube and other social media platforms. Without further ado, please welcome Jonathan Little to the All In Podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me. You know more about me than I do.
Great. Yeah, quite the intro, Ryan. You need to take a deep breath after that one?
I need to take a deep breath after that one. I think
Nice
the
job.
most amazing thing that I learned about your background was that you were a top 10 ranked Magic the Gathering player, which is a game I loved to play as a kid. And I had friends who were hyper competitive at it and some who were like super casual, but the competitive scene is tough. That's really cool.
So back in the day, they had a few formats, and I happened to play the most obscure one, where you could play basically all the cards. And
I know what you're talking
I had
about.
better cards than my opponents. So it wasn't especially fair right off the bat. And so I played in a local scene, and there was only like one other player who had equally good cards. So me and him just like took first and second literally every tournament. And if you take first and second literally every tournament, your rating gets high. They had an ELO rating, like the way they rank chess players.
Interesting.
So we just like basically never lost. And when we lost, it was to each other. So we were like 50-50 against each other. So that was like a push. And so while everybody else was playing against people of equal power level cards, we were playing with substantially better cards. We like playing poker, but you get a top 10 hand every time. And your
That's hilarious. How much did you invest in your Magic playing?
I don't know. Not a ton back then. I would just play a lot of the tournaments. I mean, I must have, like, I remember every week I'd get like $5 allowance. I'd go buy a pack of Magic cards for my $5.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I bought a deck out of all common cards. I just went to the store and paid like $20 to buy a deck and made it out of all common cards and won the tournament. So I bought in for like $20, won the tournament for like $150. And then there you go. You're good to go.
That's crazy. Just
gotta run hot.
Starter deck and winning in a Magic tournament. That's not easy.
It was way better than a random starter deck. It was substantially better than that because I got to pick the commons that I used.
I'm a little less impressed, I must say, Jonathan. I thought you were some wizard, and now it's just like shattering my image of you.
Yeah.
When I used to work at the airport, they actually called me the wizard because I'd be playing with my Magic cards and studying poker.
Oh, that's amazing.
You were
wizard.
fueling engines, correct?
I was fueling airplanes. So I worked at a airport, and one of the jobs there is to fuel up the airplanes and also like generally take care of the pilots, whatever they need. Like if they want you to go grab them lunch, you go and grab them lunch and they'll give you a tip. Or people get off the airplane, you got to carry their bags out and they'll give you a tip. So I was always a good motivated worker. But I actually purposely started to try to work the graveyard shift when not a whole lot of planes come in, because that allowed me to sit around and study poker books. And eventually I got to where I would download Party Poker on the company computer every night. And I would play for like 4 hours in the middle of the night. And that's how I grew a bankroll. So don't tell the employer that I was playing poker all night. But
that is
I got you.
funny.
I got you.
Okay.
An
I
airport
admittedly,
that shall not be named.
My employer does not allow to download poker software. I must say I've tried on my work computer.
They didn't. I don't think anybody knew there was poker software back in the day. So
That's fair.
fortunately,
Yeah,
it was
fair.
okay.
So I wanted to kick off the questions here. And one of the things, when I was looking back, I watched the full WPT final table from 2007. And beyond the hairstyles and the fashion, the most incredible thing to me was the last hand. All in, you had ace deuce, the opponent has ace seven, flop comes, deuce right on it. The deuce hits the turn, and you were just stoic, like nothing had happened. You just won $1 million. You're 22 years old. How in the world did you not go just a little crazy when that deuce hit the turn?
I don't really remember that incident. I'm sure it was all just a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
That said, I remember being like kind of annoyed that I had to spike a 2 to win the tournament. Like you want to get it in good, you know?
Right.
Like, I don't really celebrate good luck because anybody can have good luck. But like throughout that final table, I think it was Corey Carroll. Like there were a few spots where he just made like good calls, and he was right most of the time. It turns out I like to do a lot of bluffing, and I was at least hoping that I would get my money in pretty great to win the title. But I mean, like at the end of the day, who cares? Because obviously
Right.
ace 2 and ace 8 or whatever he had, like those are both just standard get-ins for 20 big blind
Right.
stacks or whatever. But I don't know. I remember that's what I was thinking. I was like, had to spike some 2s.
That's
Great.
So crazy.
Congrats, you're really great at poker.
Win's a win.
Yeah,
It's
so
nice
I
when your
remember Mike
parents
Sexton said, like, smile, son, you just won $1 million.
Yes,
But like
yes.
I didn't really care about the money back then, and I
great
still
line.
don't care about it a ton. I mean, like, even today when I'm playing poker online, people will see me playing, and I'll just like just lose a bunch of hands in a row, and they're like, how are you not annoyed or angry? It's like, just doesn't matter that much, because like even then when I won $1 million, it was like good life-changing money because
Right.
it lets me play higher stakes stuff, but it didn't change my day-to-day life all that much. And I think that's relevant. Like nothing really changed. So should I celebrate the fact that nothing really changed and I just got lucky on a guy?
Yeah, I think that's incredibly interesting. My poker coach has made sure to like make me have tangible goals in terms of like what I'd want once I like move up stakes. Because my goal is like, yeah, like I want to make money so I can move up stakes. It's not even like, oh, I want to make this money to buy a car. It's let's play bigger. I mean, obviously
Right.
the income's nice and it can afford you the ability to live if you go pro, or the ability to just buy stuff you want. But like just creating those goals, I think is interesting. And yeah, the fact that you just can live off the money and not worry about it day to day probably makes it a lot more enjoyable that you have a bankroll.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but like even back then, I was very good at sit and goes back in the day, and I was making very like good consistent money from sit and goes. So like I didn't have to worry about paying bills back then, because it's not like I just satellited into this tournament and spiked it with no other success before this.
Mhm.
Like I already had a few $100,000 bankroll from just playing $200 sit and goes and taking it slow. So I was always the like slow and steady type of poker player, whereas other people try to get rich quick. I just take it slow, and it makes it to where you're gonna have a tough time going broke, and you may give up some potential income, but that's okay. You know, I mean, I'm gonna be here for the long run, and the bills
Yeah.
are paid, so
I think-
I'm happy to not risk any sort of detrimental failure.
Makes
That's
sense. So you touched on bankroll management a little bit, and that's definitely one of our questions. So you put a
Yeah,
lot of emphasis on bankroll management with your students. What lessons have taught you to be so careful? You saw success at such a young age. Did you go against your own rules early in your career, or how did you learn how fundamentally important bankroll management is?
I don't think I ever really went against my rules in bankroll management. Really not so much. And I guess because I don't see the huge benefit of it. So I started playing Limit Hold'em a long time ago, and I read something in some book that said you needed 100 big bets. Turns out that's very conservative. You need like 300 or 500 big bets. But I always kept, some number of big bets for Limit Hold'em, got to a decently high stakes Limit Hold'em game, then moved to sit and goes, realized you need like 150 buy-ins for that. So, I already had the 150 buy-ins for that, and I just made sure to maintain that. And I mean, it just seems logical. I know some of the old school pros are like proud of the fact that they go broke and proud of the fact that they turn, $100 into $1 million overnight. And like, sure, that's going to happen sometimes, but very often you're just out your $100. And obviously, there's disproportionate amount of reward when you turn $100 into a ton. But like, I don't want to be broke. I'd rather have some money all the time than not have some money some of the time. And so that just seemed logical to me. I have an article at jlpoker.com/bankroll that has basic bankroll information for most scenarios you will find yourself in. That said, I definitely am a pretty big advocate of taking shots intelligently. Like a good example of this is back when I was playing Sit and Goes. I was playing the same games as Dave Benefield and Phil Galfond and Andrew Roble. And right around that time, Guy from Cirque du Soleil was starting to play 200, 400 no limit hold'em, and they were willing to take $100,000 out of their $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 bankroll to go give it a shot, and I was not. And some of them won. I mean, all three of those won, but there are a few other people who did the same thing and they lost, and they were just out a few $100K. Now, to be fair, if you have $500K and you lose 100 or 200 of it, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. It means you're gonna have to grind your Sit and Goes for the next 6 months to get it back. But like, I think if I had to do it again, I probably would have just taken more shots like that were just like too good to pass up on. But most of the time, those spots don't come up. It's a very, very rare occurrence for the game to just be amazingly soft for no logical reason. And also, they were playing like heads up, no limit hold'em, whereas we were all just Sit and Go players, right? So it was a very different game that felt kind of risky. Like anytime they would have a bigger buy-in Sit and Goes randomly, I would just always play those because I was skilled at those, right? So I'm always a little bit cautious taking risk at things that I don't definitively know I have an edge in. And it's important to make sure you have good self-awareness and you're able to assess your own skills, because a lot of people just think they're great at everything. And usually you're only good at a few things. I mean, this happened with whenever Pot Limit Omaha started to become popular, like 10 years ago, where a lot of no limit hold'em players who were playing like 5-10 no limit just went to 5-10 PLO, and what's the difference, right? But it turns out there's a ton more variance and it's a different game. And if you're playing high stakes at a different game that you never played before, it's probably not going to go great.
Probably had some rude awakenings right there.
Yeah, but the thing is like for some people, I'm sure it went great, and they're like, "Look, I'm a great example. I'm just crushing it." But in reality, they were one of the lucky ones that just naturally had a reasonable strategy, or maybe they just ran hot.
That's one of your first phrases in your book. Is that you? There's so many poker players who lose 10 or 12 times and just give up on the game.
Sure. I mean, imagine you play any game and you give up 10 or 12 times right off. You lose every time. You're going to quit. I mean, this is a big issue that recreational players are having right now, and something a lot of the poker sites are trying to remedy, because people are always quitting everything, right? So people quit poker just naturally, right? Maybe they decide they don't want to play anymore. Maybe they run out of money. Maybe they find something else. Maybe they have kids. Maybe they die. Who knows what, right? So they need to get new players into the game. Back in the day, when new players came into the game, they had a reasonable shot of success because everybody was bad, right? But now, even at these small stakes games, everyone is quite decent. So when someone comes into the game who, they're paying a lot of money to put advertising out and hire pros and all this stuff, so that they need that player to stick around for a while. But if that player plays, they put $50 in and they play 25 cent, 50 cent, and they just get crushed in like 17 hands. Then they put $50 more and they get crushed again. They're like, okay, well, I'm going to go play something else now. Right. And then they're done. And so that's a big struggle basically every poker site is having now. And I've talked to some of the sites about like ways they can onboard players substantially better. Really, you have to make sure they're not awful is what it amounts to.
No, that's totally fair.
It takes some education. Like if you look at games like games on your phone, like Hearthstone is a good example of this, where it's a children's card game where you have to practice for like an hour before they'll even let you play against other humans, because otherwise it just sucks. So maybe we need to do that for poker. Perhaps that's not the most fun thing to do, or maybe they give you like a 5-question test. If you can answer these 5 questions, you can pass the test or something. But I think you need to onboard players substantially better if you want them to have a good experience. And it's important to realize that recreational players play poker so they can have a good time. Yes. Right? Whereas like pros trade their time to win money, the recreational players trade their money for a good time / experience. If it's a bad experience right off the bat, they're just going to quit or not even play.
And it's an interesting thing that you bring up online poker, because recently, and I am a religious watcher of a little coffee with Jonathan Little in the mornings.
There it is.
As you so eloquently put it, you were banned from ACR for pooping where you eat. And you've been a vocal critic of unregulated online poker for a long time. What else do you think needs to change about online poker for it to be viable in the future?
I think it's going to remain viable in the future. I mean, I think Party Poker is doing a lot of good things where they're making the game effectively more fair without actually making it clear that they're doing things that are worse for the big winners. Like, for example, banning heads-up displays, right? I think heads-up displays are terrible for recreational players, right? Because they're not using heads-up display, and if they are, they're not making good use of that information. So, like, that's awful for recreational players. That said, if you ever watch me stream, I'm playing a ton of tables with a heads-up display because it's well within the rules, right? If something is allowed for you to do, you should do it. But I don't think it should be allowed. I think things like what GG does with the sweat the card option, you know, like, I don't like it. I wish I could remove this, but recreational players love it, I think.
I hate that so much.
Yeah, but it's not for you guys. It's for the recreational players.
Yes.
Right? And it's important to realize that, again, recreational players want to have a good time. So how do you make them have a good time? Maybe you let them pay 5 cents and get some poop to throw across the table at their opponent, or make a webcam where they can give you the finger or whatever. You know, like, who cares? Whatever you can do to make your recreational player happy, I think is what you generally need to do. And you can go about well, first off, recreational players don't especially want to lose every time they play either, right? So how do you make them not lose every time? The answer is increase their edge. And I mean, you can increase the recreational player's edge in all sorts of ways. You just have to ask how, like, I guess, malicious is it to the pros? One thing you can do is just straight up ban the pros, right? I mean, just ban them. Who cares? If all the pros are gone, then it's all recreational players. You could also have different player pools, right? Like, say you have this onboarding process. Maybe you put them in a player pool that's all recreational players who signed up in the last month. Maybe you do that. Maybe you don't. But that's, like, kind of against the idea, like, you can play poker with anybody you want and whatnot. Right. So it's a little bit against the way poker is typically thought of. Like with Hearthstone, for example, when you start, you're playing against the bottom of the barrel players who are not good at Hearthstone because you're not good at it either, right? And if you play against people who are good, you're just literally going to lose every time because they have better cards than you and they're better at the game. I mean, you can do all sorts of stuff. Like right now, you can play 20 tables if you want on a lot of sites. Maybe make it 1. Try playing a site where you have 1 table at a time, and then you just, well, like imagine Jonathan Little sitting here playing 16 games, you just got rid of 15 of them. You effectively banned 15 Jonathan Littles in a way that is very, like, there's nothing wrong with saying you can play 1 table at a time. Like, how would that, like, why should I be able to play 16 tables at a time? It makes literally no sense. Right. But that's going to be good for recreational players too, because recreational players aren't playing 16 tables at a time. It's only good players who are doing this. I mean, maybe they want to play 2 or 4. So maybe you find some right number that everybody agrees on, but there are lots of things you can do to either remove the pros or decrease the pros' edge without making, you know, like just straight up banning them or whatnot. So
that's really interesting. Anyway. Yeah, I think so. So next, I wanted to go back. So fresh off of that WPT win in 2007, you were in the NBC National Heads Up Championship. You beat Eric Seidel and Greg Raymer before you were knocked out by the eventual champion, Chris Jesus Ferguson.
Great.
As a young 23-year-old, you know, first, what was your biggest takeaway from that crazy tournament? And secondly, you know, what was it like being that young amongst the biggest names in poker at the time?
You're making me go back in my memory. My memory is terrible. My memory is actually not very good at all. I have a hard time remembering.
While you're remembering, you should have seen the interview that you gave in the lead up to the Chris Ferguson match. You were like, I'm going to beat him. You're like, yeah, he doesn't know how I play.
Is that what I said?
Yep. You were like, my advantage is that I know how he's going to play hands, and he has no idea how I'm going to play mine. And you're just sunglasses on and your full tilt hat, and
That sounds like something a young, dumb Jonathan Little would say. Made plenty of mistakes back in the day. It sounds like that interview was probably one of them. Also, I mean, yeah, how was it? It was cool. It was like being on a movie set or something. And they like took care of all the players very well. Like there'd be catered food and tons of cameras and tons of media there. It was a spectacle. And it's cool to be involved in a spectacle. I wish there were more spectacles nowadays. I mean, it's like, I remember back then people were mad that it was invitation only or something like this, but like, how are you going to make this thing? People always find a reason to complain about literally everything. And like, I see no problem with celebrating the biggest names in the game. And that Heads Up tournament certainly does that.
Right. And there have been rumors ever since it stopped in 2013 that it might come back. Do you think it should? And if they invited you, would you compete again?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Why not? I mean, really the issue with this is that back then, a lot of the funding came from the online poker sites that were just, you know, printing money. They were just trying their best to find ways to spend it. And a great way to spend it is to make a spectacle on NBC. So, like, I think all those things were paid programmings. I'm not sure any of them were, like, actually shows that were bought. I could be wrong about that. Like even today, a lot of the shows on TV are effectively paid programming, and like where the tournament producer pays the network to put the show on, like for if you're advertising a mop or something, same thing, except for it's a poker show. And that's kind of tough. It would be way better if these networks were actively out there trying to get poker shows, but they're not, I don't think. And why would they? We're willing to pay for it. And currently, I don't think there's any big player that is making big grand productions that are, like in America on American TV channels. Besides like WPT, they're still out there doing that, and they've been doing that for forever. But that's really pretty much it.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate it's too small, but also they lost a lot of funding, right? Whenever you have a website that's just happy to throw you $500,000 to put on a show, I mean, that makes it a million times easier because now you don't have to worry about money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The production values just give you that much better.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
but I mean, also to think about it though, like back in the day, if a company spent $500,000 getting a show on TV, they could realistically expect to get a lot of new players because everybody had not played poker back then. All those people back then who they got to play, they're not going to get to play today if they do the same show because they already played.
Right.
Or maybe they only get some of them. But also we have that same issue where they get them to play. Now they're playing against good poker players on the site and they're going to get crushed. So these new users are worth less than they used to be worth to a company. And you got to think of it from the company's point of view, right? Like what are they doing when they spend that money to put on that show? They're essentially buying advertising and they need to recoup that plus some ideally.
Right. And
back then a customer is probably worth a whole lot more than a customer is worth today for various reasons, all sorts of reasons.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So you've emphasized the importance of knowing what you were getting into before turning into a poker professional. You found so much success in the poker world, yet still urge the vast majority to keep their day job. Why is this?
Because most people should keep their day job. It's hard to win at poker. I mean, I got good at poker by essentially devoting my life to it. And I know most people don't want to devote their life to anything. They would rather be able to watch their Netflix and chill at nighttime, and they'd rather hang out with their kids or rather go to school or, like most people do not want to sit around and play poker literally all day, every day and study all day, every day. I mean, when I was 18 to 21, after I got out of high school, I think once I got rid of my job, which, eventually I got rid of my job because it doesn't make sense to get a $10 an hour job. But once I started playing poker full time, I would just like play poker something like 12 hours a day, and I would study another 4 hours a day, and then I would sleep 8 hours a day, and that was it. And I did it for like 2.5 years, and it wasn't great for me as a human. I sat in my house literally all day. I went outside once a week to get groceries, and that was it. And that's not good for you. I had no personal relationships with other humans besides my internet friends on AIM, and I didn't go anywhere to do anything, and that was it. So it was really good for getting really good at poker, but it was not good for much anything else. I was in terrible shape and I had no relationship. So it was awful for balance. But if you talk to a lot of the biggest winners, a lot of them have had periods like that, maybe not 2.5 years like I did, but maybe 6 months where they're just like all in on poker. And most people are not set up in life to be able to go all in on anything. Just because like right now, if you told me I had to get really good at and start any game, I really realistically could not give it my full devotion because I have 2 kids and I have a business and I have students that I like to try to help, and there's like other priorities, right? And so 100%. Back then I had nothing else going on besides college, which I decided I didn't want or need to do. And that was my only thing that I had to do. And so I had nothing else going on.
That's interesting. Well, the late, great Mike Sexton once said that you are the hardest working poker player in the world. And you were just talking about those periods of time that you were just truly in the grind. What could keep you motivated to maintain a lifestyle like that for 2 years? And what keeps you motivated today to continue studying?
I enjoy grinding out stuff. Like, why do I have 15 books now, not 14, 15? Why do I have 15 books? Because it's fun. It's a fun process. And I don't mind sitting down and doing work. I'm grinding out number 16 right now. I'm almost finished with it. That'll be out next year, right? I mean, I enjoy the grind. It's fun. It's not hard. It's like, what motivates you to sit and play poker all day for 12 hours? I don't know. I liked it. It was fun. And I like playing games. And the nice thing about the poker grind, especially back then, is that I was getting rich off of it. So like if you take a kid whose earning potential is $10 an hour and all of a sudden he's getting paid like $300 an hour, that's going to motivate you to work all day, every day, because why not? And if I knew what I knew today, I would have just kept grinding harder and harder than I did back then, because eventually like party poker closed up to Americans because they try to do the right thing based on law. And that took away that income stream to some extent. I mean, I had to go play on PokerStars, which was tougher because lots of the recreational players from Party Poker quit, but all the pros from Party Poker went to PokerStars, which stayed in America for a while. So anyway, the games got a whole lot tougher. So if I knew there was a deadline for my earning potential, I would have just grinded it as hard as I possibly could.
That's really
Because
interesting.
like when I turned 21, I started traveling the live circuit, playing $1,000 buy-in tournaments randomly. I mean, why would I play $1,000 tournament when I can make $1,000 in 5 hours playing online or whatever it was?
Yeah, it just
doesn't make sense. So I squandered about a year and a half or something like that. But what can you do?
Kind of feeds into our next question, which just how many hours have you been logging on the Felt or virtual Felt yourself the past few years? Obviously, you've been incredibly busy with your family, with your coaching business. So how many hours are you putting in?
I have a very odd life setup. So pre-COVID, I would usually travel to a live tournament circuit for about 1 week per month. And that would be all of the poker I would play. I try to play 12, 16 hours a day, every day while I was gone, like really put in a full grind. And then when I would come home, I would not play at all. And that's because I'd be working on books or working on my site, pokercoaching.com, or coaching students or whatever, right? Like I had a lot of other stuff going on. And like studying poker, I try to go through a lot of the content that gets put up on my site. And it turns out that's more than even I can watch sometimes. So I have a lot to do, right? So the pre-COVID, I was playing about 1 week per month, pretty hard when I was playing. If I'd go out of the country, I'd play online, if I could play from wherever we were. Mm-hmm. So I'd be playing like random PokerStars and Party Poker games. But after COVID, I didn't really even plan to play at all, but my students were saying, why don't you stream? And every time I tried to go out of the country, I would stream. I tried to stream, but the internet was always terrible. For whatever reason, like the last 4 or 5 trips where I went overseas, the internet was so bad I could not stream. So like I had full intention of streaming, but I just couldn't. So anyway, I decided to start streaming on Sundays because why not? So then I would be playing Sundays. I would play on ACR and I would basically load up every $50 buy-in game and higher that they had. It started about 2 o'clock, ended about 4 a.m. And, nice solid grind. Seems like a good way to put in volume. I think I'd play like 40 or 50 buy-ins worth of tournaments in that day. And that's good. I like putting in volume. Turns out if you put in volume, if you're good, you win. If you're not good, you don't win. And I was actually kind of nervous about it because I had not put in substantial volume online in quite a while. And when you're playing live, you don't get to put in great volume. And I know my live results have been marginal over the last 2 or 3 years. I've had a bunch of like 7th, 8th, and 9th and WPT type tournaments where, you get like 10 buy-ins or something back, which is fine, but you're not winning money, not winning a ton of money doing that. Whereas if you just like win 2 or 3 flips, you win the tournament, right?
Right.
So that was frustrating, but playing online was good.
And you lose a portion of your winning anyway. That 10 buy-in win turns into 5 really quick if you have a swap with someone.
Yeah, but if you're doing that kind of thing too, though, you get money back on the other end, or you are playing for smaller stakes or whatever.
Fair.
But so anyway, like you don't get substantial volume and you don't get clear results when you play live poker unless you're just playing a ton, which I'm not playing a ton, right? I'm only playing 1 week a month, and like I said, I play 7 tournaments in that week. It's not actually a ton of volume. Whereas online, you can put in 50 a day, and I think I only stream like 10 sessions or 12 sessions, something like that. But I think I put in about 500 tournaments in that period and won a decent amount, so it was good. And it was like just kind of straight up. When you have a straight up tournament graph, it's nice. It doesn't happen all that often. Usually, it's more just really like down in the dumpster for forever.
And then one big up, and then down, and then one big up. Yeah. Always. But
a lot of the high stakes tournaments on that site are relatively small field, and you can re-enter late. So like you're going to make deep runs inevitably, and so that mitigates variance to some extent.
That's awesome. So one other thing is, speaking of your coaching site, pokercoaching.com, you have one of the best lineups of coaches that I've seen. You've got Ross Jaka, you've got James Romero, you've got Matt Affleck, just to name a couple. How did this all get started? How did you come to the decision to make a poker site? And how did you convince these people to join you and be coaches?
So I've had a coaching site for a long time. I started a site called Float the Turn. This must have been 14 or 15 years ago. And actually, it was called Sit and Go Icons back then because we only taught sit and goes. It was me and a few other sit and go players. And eventually they wanted to get out. They were tired of making videos all the time because they didn't like the grind like I like the grind. And so it became my own site. We wanted to get away from only sit and goes because it was clear sit and goes were just dying back then because the game's not all that hard. Turns out if the game's easy, the game will die. Like, nobody plays tic-tac-toe for money. So we had to get out of sit and goes. So we moved over to tournaments, which I was pretty good at. And we had 6 or 8 coaches back then. No huge names. I think Sam Greenwood was a coach back then, but that was before he was Super Crusher. So anyway, that was just like floundering around. And then I met someone randomly at a casino who knew of me, and he said, "Why don't you make a video and let me try to sell it? Let me use my marketing abilities." He just got out of some marketing class or something to try to sell it. And so I made a video where I played 180 person sit and goes for like 12 hours. And I won like 300 buy-ins or something ridiculous. So I just like won every tournament. So it was a solid video. So we made this and I gave it to him and he started promoting it using this affiliate program. I don't even know if it's still around now, but we made like $10,000 in the first month. I'm like, oh, this is good. Because I was like spending $3,000 or $4,000 and losing $3,000 or $4,000 on the site, making a ton of actually substantially better content from all sorts of players. But then you make this one-off video and sell it and we just do great. So we did that for, I was going to make a new thing for like, I don't know, 6 or 8 years. That was good. But then about 5 years ago, I knew I wanted to try to figure out a way to stay home with my family because I knew I wanted to have 2 kids. I have 2 little boys now. They're 1 and 3. And I wanted to be able to be at home for a substantial period of time, which means I need this coaching business to make substantial income on a regular basis, where perhaps if I need to take a month off or whatever, I can. So we started hiring a few more coaches. We tried to get it to where we have all sorts of like diverse content. Like we have quizzes and homework questions and videos and courses and live webinars. Like today, started right now. Well, I don't know. People are gonna watch this later. We have Draft Ganger, who's like #1 player in the world. He took 7th place in a WPT yesterday for $200K. He's streaming for the Poker Coaching Premium members right now. And so I'm trying to hire a lot of the people who I want to learn from. I'm basically finding everyone who Jonathan Little wants private coaching from, and I'm paying them to make coaching for me and everybody else.
Sounds like you're getting a good deal out of that.
Yeah. So I mean, how do we get people to work with me? It's ask some people, right? I ask people who I respect, and probably, I don't know, half the people say sure, because it's like I'm pretty sure I overpay people for content because I know how much some of the other sites pay, but I don't mind. I don't mind overpaying because it makes the coaches happy, and I appreciate their work, right? And so, how do they work with me? Why do they work with me? Because we have a good product. I mean, interestingly enough, when I made my first Excelling at No Limit Hold'em book, this must have been 3 or 4 years ago, multiple people said they would not have signed on unless they knew I could get work done.
This one?
No, that's a different one.
Come on.
But people know I'm going to do work and I'm going to get the job done is what it amounts to. And if you know the work you're going to do is going to be utilized and you're getting paid a good rate, like what's the problem? Why would you not work? Unless of course, like you don't want to share your educational material or you just don't want to do it, right? I mean, there's certainly reasons why you just don't want to do it, but it wasn't so hard to get a lot of the coaches. Just ask them and they say sure. I mean, Draft Ganger is a good example. That's where, like, I asked him like a year ago. He said, "I'm busy. Check back in every 6 months." I checked back in 6 months ago, and he said, "Sure." So I was like, "Okay, here we go." So, like, sometimes it just doesn't line up with people's lives. And also, I'm pretty. I mean, you have to be very like lax with poker players because they randomly will make deep runs and stuff. They'll randomly just disappear for a month, because poker players are a little bit aloof to some extent, and that's cool. I don't mind. I let them know what I want turned in a long time in advance, and turns out they mostly all do it.
It's awesome. Really
good. Cool. It's easy. I mean, so now I have a team with multiple employees. I have one of my employees. He's in charge of like content management and whatnot, and it became way too overwhelming for me because, like I said, I can barely watch like half the stuff that comes in. But he's in charge of making sure everything's good and high quality, and make sure everyone shows up on time, and it's a whole process, man.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
High quality stuff, but I think that's all our questions for today. Is that right, Ryan?
That's right. That's all I have for him.
But very much appreciate you coming on, Jonathan. We will look forward to your future books, and we'll continue watching your podcasts. And anyone watching should definitely check out his coaching. Sure, it's amazing.
Really.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em Games.
There we go.
There's Draft Ganger right there. This guy, Bert Stevens.
He's
lots of other great players. Here's Vlada. I did not know Vlada before I started working with this book. He actually just won the Stadium Series on PokerStars for $1 million the other day. So that was cool. Anyway, Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em Games. I have 20 or 30 page chapters by all these poker players who are like literally the best in the world. You can get it at jlpoker.com/excellingtough. So
is it on Amazon yet?
It is on Amazon. Audible is not available yet. I'm actually recording that in October because all the sound studios have been closed. So that's one more thing I have to do,
Yeah, add it to the list.
Yes.
But thank you again, Jonathan, and good luck with the grind.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me. Good luck with everything.
No problem.
thanks.
Alrighty, that was a great interview, Ryan. That's probably the first interview where I'd say I've been nervous in. It's a little quiet. Yeah, you pinching yourself, making sure it's real.
We're still here.
Shoot. All right, so we've got a few hands for you guys. Our first one is your hands, I believe, from a tournament.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
This one is very interesting. So, $100 buy-in freeze-out tournament. So, for those of you who don't know what freeze-out means, it just means that you only get one bullet, so there's no rebuys. There's probably about 18 entrants, and only the top 3 get paid. It's a structure that really benefits playing obscenely tight until things get short-stacked, and then you just kind of have to get lucky. In a lot of spots, especially like leading up to and including the FT. It's a weird format, but we are very early on. Blinds are 75, 150. Everyone started with 20K, so you can tell by the stacks even that we're pretty early on. There's 2 limpers to me, and I'm in the cutoff with pocket kings. Wow, what a shot. Limp to me, I'm definitely going to open this. I think I go to like 850. So I think it's fine. We're super deep, and I'm way at the top of my range. And plus, if I'm opening the pot with any hand from the cutoff, I'm still making it that size. It's not like it's only kings that I'm going to 800 with. Like, I'm doing this with 6-7 suited. So, I don't know.
So what did you make it?
I think I made it like 8 something.
Okay, yeah, I like the sizing. Obviously, you have to size up given the 2 limpers, and you're in position, so you don't necessarily have to go huge, but I think it's pretty good sizing.
Yeah.
Button flats. All right, it's a party. How do you fold?
You know what's amazing? Yeah, exactly.
How do you
So
fold?
we get a cold call from the big blind. We get the small and the big blind to call, and then both limpers fold. And so if that tells you anything you need to know about the player pool. That tells you everything.
If you're gonna limp and there's 4 people who call,
how are you not calling?
Fold. All right. Anyways, we got a pretty favorable flop. 4K in the pot.
Action checks to me.
Checks to
and so
you.
this is curious, right? So I go, what is that? Just a little over half.
Yeah.
And I think I just go a little over half because there's the flush draw out there. I think you could quibble to make it a little smaller or a little bigger. I think if this board were slightly more connected, like maybe 6-8 queen with 2 hearts, that making it even a little bigger sounds better. But being this disconnected, it's really only likely that like 6-7 pairs and flush draws. There's still a lot that can continue.
I mean, you're 4-way. I think sizing up a little bit more makes sense. I think a lot of hands can continue that you don't necessarily want to continue. So, I mean, I would probably size up a little more to like tune of 2,600-2,700 personally, especially given that these players aren't very good. So, like, these players could easily have like Ace-8, like, you know what I mean? Like some wanky hand that just is not going to fold to a flop bet. So I like a little bigger here, but I mean, it's okay.
I think we only get one. No, we get 2 callers.
You got 2 callers. So I mean, obviously we don't want a hearts peel on the turn, and the heart peels on the turn, and an 8. Not a good card for us.
I think this is literally one of, if not the worst card that, other than an ace, pretty much. The 8 of hearts.
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the second worst card in the deck for you.
Right.
And then he bets small. He bets 3K into 10K after it's checked to him.
And I check here. And that's an interesting point, too. Do you think with the King of Hearts that it's worth betting into 2 other people here? Because I was so convinced that either Tilt Point or Chirp would, like, at one of them was pretty likely to show up with the flush here. So,
They don't even need the flush, though. The 8s that just call the flop hit. I mean, this is a horrible card for you.
Right.
I mean, what are you putting your opponents on when they call flop? Do you really think a queen is going to bet into you? The answer is no. And a queen might call you, but at the same time, I think you're behind more than you're ahead here. And having the King of Hearts in your hand is really important, because I think it's just a standard check call. Because raising really gets nothing done. I mean, if he has an 8, I don't see him folding given the scenario. I mean, it's not a cash game, it's a tournament. I mean, if you're going to turn trips, like, you're not dead. You've only got, 13K? I mean, I just don't see him getting away from even trips here. So I see absolutely zero merit in raising, and he bets so small here that I just don't think you can fold. I mean, he has barely any boats. I mean, he shouldn't have 8-5, Queen 8. You know what I mean?
Right.
Pocket fives, like he should have raised that. So I really see him having a flush here or an 8, and I think you're beat right now. And I mean, hopefully an 8, a king or a heart comes on the river. I think it's just a standard call, which I'm sure you do, because if I know you.
Can't lay down an overpair. Yeah, that's me. Ryan the Rock, he sees 2 kings, he can't let them go.
Well, more so, I mean, you're not going to raise, and I don't think
Right.
you'd fold here either. So
I
you
agree.
do what I expect, and the river comes a 4. Oh, such an annoying bet. And he bets 4K into 16K. Wow, okay. So he is laying you some damn good odds. You have to risk 4K to win 20K.
20, full buy-in. Right.
So you only have to be right here 20% of the time. So here's the question. Do you think you're right here 20% of the time?
And that was the thing, was like at the time, I was just trying to decide whether or not he could do this with a queen. And what's interesting is that your turn note makes a whole lot of sense. And I didn't really think enough about what his sizing on the turn meant. So when we got to this river card and you bet small here, and you didn't go for all of it, I was like, you know, on a paired board with a 3 to a flush out there, you'd figure that he'd want to go bigger to polarize. So when he went to the sizing, I was just confused. Yeah. And I don't know if it was necessarily odds that put me to the call, but I think, and this may be wrong in my thought process, I was like, is he capable of doing this with queen, jack, king, queen, and ace, queen? And I thought yes, and therefore I put it in call. And I think that's not.
I think he's an idiot if he's doing this with queen, jack. And I
agree.
I think if he has a queen, even if he's bad, I think some bad players would elect to bet here. But I only think the bad players would be betting queen, king, and ace, king. Or I mean ace, queen. And I don't think that on the button, this player would just flat when you decide to put on a raise with ace, queen. I mean, maybe king, queen off decides to flat. I mean, it's a little tight. But I just see him having it here probably 95% of the time, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously it's so player dependent, and I don't know how much history you have with this opponent.
Not a lot. He's an only tournament player, so I hadn't had too much history.
To me, it just screams value. I mean, what bluffs does he have? You either assume he's value betting stupidly with a queen,
right? Or
he's just, I mean, what do you think he has? The ace of heart in his hands?
Yeah, I think like ace X or ace X off, which really doesn't make any sense as a cold caller from the button for him to have. I mean,
if we're looking at ace 5 off, makes some sense, but other than that, like, I don't see him floating you with just ace of hearts, like 3 of clubs, just to steal the pot on the turn when it's multi-way. Yeah. It's not even like your heads up. So I lean towards a fold here, to be honest with you. I see why you called. I mean, it's hard to lay down an overpair, but I think just given this horrible turn card and this run out, that you just got to lay it down, in my opinion.
I totally agree.
I think you call and you're probably beating.
I did. I put in the call, and I kick myself when he rolls over the good old-fashioned 7-8 off. And I was just like, dang, just.
I mean, it makes sense.
It does.
Especially his sizing. I mean, it's like, oh, I have value, but like it's not even that good of a hand. Yeah. The thing is, if you jam,
that's what I was about to argue. I was about to make the argument. Well, here's the thing, and here's what I thought about that too in hindsight. And then when you go back and you look at our stack depth, I don't think I had enough fold equity.
I'm not folding if I'm him. I'm so curious as to what I do here if I'm him.
Yeah, I don't know if I bet that amount.
I don't know if I bet. Like,
probably just check back.
Yeah, I mean, if I have ace 8, I like a bet a lot more. But like,
7-8.
If you have an 8, you're just gonna check call when the flush is there. You know what I mean? Paired. But anyways, I think we beat that hand.
That's an interesting spot.
Definitely an interesting spot.
Identifying a good turn card and position is very interesting.
For sure. All right, so we've got 2 more hands for you guys. We are right on schedule, about 45 minutes in. Let's pull it up.
Gorgeous.
Alrighty, so
this is a unique one.
You have am I in this hand?
Yeah, you're Bruce.
Oh, do I play this
We're
hand?
playing it from.
Is this against Fog or no?
Yeah, so our Paul is Fog.
Okay, so our Paul is Fog. Okay, so he decides to make it 6. I don't know if you want my thinking.
I'll go through it. Right. So
we're going through his perspective. So let's go his perspective first.
Exactly.
I think 6 is a little small, especially given how he raises. He used to always raise to 10 in most games, and tonight, interestingly, he was mainly raising to 6 or 8. But I think there was a sizing tell there, where I think he was raising his stronger hands to 8, and I think that people may have picked up on it. So I think open's fine here. I mean, we're what, 7-handed? Yeah, I make it $8.
I do.
$6 I think could potentially be exploitable.
I agree.
So Chappie flats and Bryce makes it 28. Yeah, I mean, fairly large raise, but not insane. I mean, it's 4x plus a little for the limper. We're fairly deep, so let's see if anyone else calls.
Right, because I mean, there's 12, 13.
I mean, we're deep enough.
15 in there, and yeah, you're like
a call's totally fine.
500 big blinds deep, and he's 300 big blinds deep.
Yeah.
4 and a bit is probably fine. Yeah, I don't think that's bad at all.
Yeah, I like playing deep stacked poker, so I mean,
it's way more fun. The ranges get wide. So
right,
okay, we get one flatter, which is you.
No, I raised. He called.
Or you raised. He flats and then check.
Yeah. Okay. So pretty good flop for our hand. Pair plus flush draw.
Yep.
Obviously, opponent has a lot more aces here when they 3-bet us. But I mean, not a bad flop. What'd you say?
Ever? Could this be a lead candidate ever into a pre-flop? I mean, I don't think it's
no. I think absolutely not. I mean, what do you put? Like, what am I doing that with? Do you think I'm doing that with ace-9 or ace-5? Because if I have those hands, I expect the opponent, the villain, especially me, I'm c-betting this board like 95% of the time. I don't know. Right. I don't know when I'm not c-betting this board. So I like a check raise more with my nutted hand. So I think it looks like either a draw or sometimes like, I mean, ace-5, ace-9, I think, again, a check raise just makes you more money. If you just lead and I don't have an 8, what am I calling with a flush draw?
Yeah.
I mean, you have the flush draw. So I think it makes absolutely no sense to lead here.
I really like check raise. I really like it because you force the opponent to put, opponent puts chips in and then you can make it.
We'll talk about that in a second. I might disagree with you. So I bet 28. So I think the sizing is actually really interesting because I think typically when I have an ace, I think I size up. So I think it's a weird sizing on my part. So I think I would be confused by this bet sizing. I think it either looks a lot like, I don't even know. I can't even tell you what it looks like. Ace queen just trying to extract value and get you to float with like a 9 or something. I think that maybe, but you block the flush draw. You have a pair. If you decide to check raise this, typically on a c-bet, I wouldn't like a check raise, but given my sizing, I actually agree with you. So if I lead here for like 35 or 40, I don't think a check raise makes sense. I think it's bloating the pot, and I'm not folding ace king, ace queen, and you're going to have to put a hell of a lot of pressure, and I might not get off that on the turn. I mean, obviously, you have the ace-5s, ace-9s more than I do, but if a high card comes out, or if I just decide to, I mean, I don't even know if it's being sticky with ace-king, ace-queen. So a check raise here isn't bad, but, I mean, I'm never folding this ever, so obviously you can take that out of the question.
Call's fine. I think I like the more aggressive approach, especially at this depth, where, you know, if you're trying to get more money in, you're probably going to get...
But here's the thing. Why are you trying to get more money in? Do you think that I'm calling with a worse hand? And I think that's an important distinction, because what am I calling with? If I have 10s, I fold that out, which, good. So I think the goal of this bet, if you're trying to fold out my better hands, is folding out my 10s to kings.
Yep.
And I don't know if I fold those. It depends on the sizing. Honestly,
but
I think I fold...
Isn't the real argument here that you want to put in more money before your draw hits? Because if, you know...
Then it's more disguised?
Clubs. Well, no, I'm saying if the king of clubs rolls off on the turn, how much more money is going in the middle? If he just check calls here and the king of club comes on the turn, maybe you check back turn.
And that's a very good point. He texted me about this hand, and I thought his logic was interesting. I'll pull that up in a second, but let's see what he decides to do.
Does he raise you?
No. He calls me. So a little less variance route and just decides to call. And the turn's a jack. So blank. I mean, not a complete blank, but it doesn't complete any draws, and I mean, we both could have ace jack here, but it doesn't
Right.
really favor.
Well, the thing is, like, now you're trying to think about like how many. So check that is 70 into 120. So what we're
So
calling
what do
70
you?
to win, like 100.
It's like a 60 whatever percent. 65. What do you make of this sizing? 70 into 120.
I mean, I think I'm still calling here. I think if I flatted flop that I can't fold on this specific turn card. I don't
I agree.
because I don't like nothing's there yet. Like Queen 10, I get. I mean, I don't really know.
I
There's
mean,
just
at
not a
this
lot.
point, you're just saying I have aces. You think I have ace king, ace queen, ace jack? Makes sense. All of those hands make sense. And the jack actually, in that sense, is better for me because it could potentially make your chair worse.
Yes.
But I mean, yeah, I think you're thinking I have a lot of aces at this point.
I don't know. I mean, like, can you fold with pair plus here? If you think you're alive,
I'm not folding, especially to me, if I'm him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, if you're live to any
Because-
9 or 8, you got 2, 3, so it's 5.
The tough thing is, I think a lot of opponents would give up if you're in my position and you don't have an ace when it goes call. But I think Fog is also known. It's interesting because he's known to call light, but he's more so known to lay down bigger hands. I feel like.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially to triple barrels. You know what I mean? So I think I'm putting in the triple barrel here, assuming a non-club at a very high frequency. So if you don't hit your 8, 9 or club, I think it's a give up on the river. I really do. But yeah.
Well, that's the thing, too. I think there are some cards that he can bluff on. I think that a 10, like a blank 10, is a card that he can bluff on. I think maybe even a 7 is a card that he can. Oh, maybe not 7. That doesn't complete anything. But I think specifically a 10 might be the only card that he could bluff on. That doesn't.
Here's the interesting thing though. If he decides to flat, he told me he might lead river, and I was like given a brick, and I was like, man, that doesn't really make sense. Like, why would you lead river? He's like, oh, well, I thought you might be bluffing. But if you think I'm bluffing, why would you not check call?
Yeah.
Well, not check call with a 9, but like you could potentially. I mean, it's a little loose, but why would you bet into someone if you think they're bluffing? You know what I mean? So I think I continue on this turn. But, I mean, it's tough, because if you hit your club, you're getting 0 value. But, I mean, you don't know that. If you're assuming I have an ace, like, do you think I fold ace-king when a club rolls off? It's an interesting argument.
Right.
I think if he pots it when a club comes, I think I fold. If he bets 50 to 65% of the pot, I call, but I think it's just so important on sizing. And I'm actually fearful that if he called with a club, I think he barrels for pot. And I think if I had something, I fold. In this specific instance, I have 4 or 5 of hearts, I believe.
Oh, yes, you do. Yeah.
So, I mean, I like my line. I think I might want to go a little bigger on the flop. I'm curious. I honestly don't know what I was thinking. I think I was thinking I want him to float me. He floats me sometimes when I bet smaller, and like I had backdoor flush potential. I guess I got a pair. Let's see a turn.
Marginal made, baby. That's all that was.
Marginal made.
Marginal
We qualified.
You qualified.
But, yeah, so I think that's an interesting hand, and I think against aggressive action players like me, I think you just gotta go with it sometimes. But it's tough, and that's why I play the way I do. I put max pressure, and it's hard to play against.
And while you're pulling up that next hand, I think that his mindset last night may have had something to do with that as well. Where like he had we were on a Zoom call with him, and he kind of seemed a little disheartened. And that's one of those things where if like, you run into a couple of bad hands, like you make a bad call or two, just go take a lap. Get up, walk away. No game is good enough for it to ruin your mental health, Get up, walk away, take a lap, get some water.
I think he probably went to bed okay. I think it's more so you don't want it to ruin your game. Like your C game is not going to beat people's game. Like regardless of your game, like don't play when you're not playing your A game, like 100%.
I totally agree.
So this last hand is another viewer submission, not on Share My Pair. It is from PP Poker, and it is a 51 cash game, and we have kings once again. Let's play some kings.
Kings in the small
raised a 3, a call of 3, and we decided to bump it up. I like his sizing out of position here. He sizes up to $14, like about 4.5x. I like it. You add another one for the flat behind.
I paused right at that moment, and I was like, okay, what would I size here? And I would have done exactly the same thing. I literally said 14.
I would have gone to 15, but 14.50 is fine. I want to go over the 50 cents. You know I'm serious.
I know you are. I know. That's why I'm laughing.
So there's 45 in the pot, 5-3-7. Not an amazing board for our range, but obviously we have all the overpairs, and I think a lead is completely standard here.
Absolutely. Like half.
I actually
a little more.
Yeah, I agree with your analysis of half a little more. I think I'd look to size probably $25 here.
Yep.
And the reason being, there's straight and flush potential. Obviously, this board favors your opponent's range. They could have a ton of sets, but at the same time, they could have a lot of hands like 7-8, 6-7, 5-6. I mean, obviously, Douglas has that more than Jesse has, but I think sizing up more makes sense. I mean, you're gonna fold out probably their queen tens, king queens, like all. You know what I mean? You're gonna fold out their overcards when you bet this. So if they're qualified, they're gonna call you anyway.
Exactly.
So I feel like you just bet 25 and you want to charge their draws. I mean, if they've got a flush draw, you hold the king of hearts in your hand, but they still could have those draws. So yeah, I like going a little bigger here. But I mean,
and you also open up the door
for a check raise. Yeah, and I think if you bet 25 here and you get raised to 75, I think. I mean, it's tough because of SPR. I mean, you're putting it in or you're not. But I honestly don't know how many times he raises with the draw. I mean, unless he has like 6-8 of hearts, which I totally do this with, I personally am not raising a draw in this situation if I'm in position against someone who 3-bet here because they have all the overpairs. So unless I actually have a made hand, if I'm Douglas, I personally am not raising unless it's something like a straight flush draw, which I just have tons of equity. Let's put the money in. Let's gamble. But if I just have like 10 jack of hearts, I'm not making this play.
No.
So I mean, given that, that's why I like sizing up more. When you bet 14, he raises to 44. I think it's okay to peel, but I mean, I am under the assumption at this point that we are behind. I think calling here calling here to reevaluate a turn is okay.
Yes,
but
I agree.
I think sizing up bigger with the intention to fold to a raise isn't bad. And that's how I would play it. But I mean, this is an okay line. We call river's a deuce. I mean, 4-6 was already there.
Right. I mean,
ace-4, unless he has ace-4 of hearts exactly, which is still a little loose.
It exists, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm checking.
He does, yeah.
And he jams. I mean, yeah, so little tough of a spot here. He bets pot. We've got an overpair. I mean, we expected him to do this, though. Like, if he has a flush draw, he's not going to bet small to leave you with an SPR where you're going to call literally any single river.
But
so
do you think he has do that with a set? Do you think if he has
I think he jams a set here. 100% he jams a set.
Too.
I don't think he bets like 60. You know what I mean? He's giving you literally a crazy price where he's going to put it in on the river. So no, I think he does this with all of his made hands, and I think he does it with whatever bluffs he has. I mean, we named a few, but I think this just gravitates towards very set heavy, and if not, a hand like 7-5 suited. So at this point, I'm putting opponent on 7-5 suited or a set of 3 5s or 7s, because he just decided to fall behind. So that's what I'm putting him on. I mean, I don't hate a call here. But honestly, I don't think you're good enough times. I mean, you're risking 130 to win, 390-ish? I mean, you have to be right here 33% of the time. And I honestly don't think you are.
And that's the thing is you've only invested, or I don't want to say you've only invested, X amount of money, but you've put in like somewhere around $60 into this pot at this point.
Yeah.
Now this bet is more than twice what you've already put into this.
I think you just have to cut your losses. I think you're good here maybe about 10 to 15% of the time. Like, you're not never good here. 100% the opponent has bluffs. But I just think given the action, you're beat. I'm going to assume he puts in the call.
I mean, I would tank too.
I think it's interesting watching this real time.
Analysis.
Putting in some time banks. Making use of those time banks.
Time banks are hella important in online poker. If you don't have them, spend $5 and get yourself some time banks.
We call. He's got Queen Jack of Hearts, and I am wrong and look like an idiot. Anyways.
Well, we did say he could have a
yeah, but I said exactly that 2 over flush draws isn't going to play a hand like this. And he did. And he asked me, do you think I could have played this hand any differently? I mean, look, man, you got the money in, and I'm the one looking dumb here. Right. Obviously, I do want to note that I think 51 games play a little differently in the sense that people are a little more willing to be spewy. But, yes. I mean, you did nothing wrong. You got the money in good. Yes. I think I can find a turn. Obviously, I haven't played with these players at all, and you didn't give me any information on their player archetypes. But, I mean, if you've been playing with this player for a while and seen him play draws aggressively, then this call makes more sense.
You were a 5-point favorite going to this river.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, man. I mean, you got screwed on the river. Like, you got your money in good. Pat on the back for making that call. Like, I wouldn't be results oriented. I mean, you didn't express being upset at all or anything of that nature, but like you did well, man.
And I think speaking that out, because that's what I'm saying. Yeah. You have to. That's the real question here. If you think that villain is capable of doing that with a flush draw, then it's a call. And if you don't think, because they're super tight or super passive or whatever, and you're like, I've never seen this person pot a turn like this before, then that's a spot where you get away. It's not a speculative call. I think if you think they're capable, then you can do that. So, good call.
Yeah, good call, man. Hope you enjoyed our analysis. Feel free to shoot us more hands. Very much appreciate your guys' viewer submission hands. Cannot believe we had Jonathan Little on the podcast. So amazing. We're going to continue to reach out to these big names, try to continue to grow the podcast. Share, like, subscribe. Appreciate everything. Ryan, do you have anything before we sign off?
No, sir. Keep sending in those submissions. Like, subscribe, do all those good things, and we'll be back here. Maybe actually on time next week. Maybe Wednesday at 7.
Can't wait to watch your webcam that you've got on the way. But we're gonna have another amazing guest next week. Continue to watch, and see you guys next week.